The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone in the universe. They sent signals into the void. They searched for signs of life. They dreamed of meeting other beings from distant worlds. On the morning of March 15th, 2147, those dreams turned into nightmares. Admiral Zethkar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Wrath. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 6 eyes that glowed with a pale blue light. Behind him, through the massive viewing window, 4,000 warships stretched across the darkness of space. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one carried weapons that could turn mountains into dust. The Vexorian Empire had conquered 37 species across the galaxy. Some had fought back. Most had simply surrendered when they saw the size of the armada. Zethkar expected the same from Earth. His scouts had studied humanity for decades. They were a young species, barely capable of traveling to their own moon. They spent most of their time fighting each other over small pieces of land and different ideas about invisible gods. They would be easy prey. "Send the message," Zethkar ordered. His voice was deep and cold, like stones grinding together. Sub-Admiral Vrex, his second-in-command, pressed a series of buttons on the control panel. The transmission went out on every frequency, translated into every human language. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Zethkar of the Vexorian Dominion. Your planet now belongs to the Empire. You will surrender all weapons. You will submit to our rule. You will serve the Dominion as all conquered species serve. You have 6 hours to respond. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. This is your only warning." The message reached Earth in seconds. It appeared on every television screen, every computer, every phone. People stopped in the streets and stared at the sky. Children asked their parents what was happening. Governments scrambled to confirm what they were seeing. In Geneva, Switzerland, Commander Daniel Harrison sat in the control room of the United Earth Defense Command. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many wars. He had spent his entire career preparing for threats that came from other nations. He never imagined the threat would come from the stars. Captain Lisa Monroe stood beside him. She was younger, in her early 40s, with short brown hair and a scar on her left cheek from a training accident years ago. She had been Daniel's second-in-command for 5 years. In all that time, she had never seen him look afraid. He looked afraid now. "Is this real?" Lisa asked quietly. Daniel nodded slowly. "The satellites confirm it. 4,000 ships in orbit around the moon. Each one is at least a mile long." "What do we do?" Before Daniel could answer, the secure phone on his desk began to ring. He picked it up and heard the voice of President Nathan Cole. "Commander Harrison, I assume you have seen the transmission." "Yes, sir." "The World Council is meeting in 1 hour. We need options." Daniel looked at the screens around him. They showed images from telescopes pointed at the alien fleet. The ships were massive and terrifying, covered in weapons and armor that humanity could not understand. They made Earth's most advanced warships look like toys. "Sir, with respect, I am not sure we have options. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, maybe thousands of years." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then President Cole spoke again. "Are you suggesting we surrender?" Daniel thought about the question. He thought about his daughter who lived in Boston with her husband and 2 children. He thought about the billions of people across the planet who were looking at the sky right now, wondering if they would live to see tomorrow. He thought about everything humanity had built, everything they had achieved, everything they had survived. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, near extinction events. Humanity had faced them all and kept going. They had crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. They had split the atom and walked on the moon. They had made mistakes, terrible mistakes. but they had always found a way to survive. And now some alien empire wanted them to kneel. "No, sir," Daniel said firmly. "I am not suggesting we surrender. I am suggesting we fight." "Fight? Against that?" President Cole's voice was heavy with doubt. "Yes, sir. We fight. Because that is what humans do. We do not give up. We do not bow down. We do not go quietly into the night." Lisa looked at Daniel with surprise. She had known him for years, but she had never heard him speak like this. "What exactly are you proposing, Commander?" the President asked. Daniel took a deep breath. "We have spent the last 50 years preparing for threats we could not predict. We have orbital defense platforms hidden among our satellites. We have weapons we have never shown the world. We have bunkers and shelters and plans for exactly this kind of scenario. You think we can win? I think we can make them bleed. I think we can show them that Earth is not worth the cost. And I think that if we surrender, we lose everything that makes us human." The President was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "What message do we send them?" Daniel looked at Lisa. She nodded slowly, understanding what he was thinking. "We send them one word, sir. One word that tells them exactly who they are dealing with." "What word?" Daniel smiled grimly. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with death and decided to face it standing up. "Die." The response was transmitted 1 hour before the deadline. It went out on every frequency, in every galactic language the Vexorians had provided. A single word, repeated once. Die. Admiral Zethkar received the message on the bridge of the Eternal Wrath. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his 6 eyes blinking in confusion. "Is this a translation error?" he asked. Vrex checked the systems. "No, Admiral. The message is clear. They are telling us to die." Zethkar laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed through the command deck. "These primitives have courage. I will give them that. Foolish, suicidal courage." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Zethkar turned to face the blue planet hanging in the void. It looked so small, so fragile, so easy to crush. "Begin the invasion. Show them what happens to species that defy the Dominion." The Vexorian fleet began to move. Thousands of ships advanced toward Earth, their weapons charging, their soldiers preparing for battle. They expected resistance. They expected some fighting. They expected the humans to eventually realize their mistake and beg for mercy. They did not expect what was about to happen. Because Admiral Zethkar had made the same mistake that every conqueror in human history had made. He had looked at Earth and seen weakness. He had looked at humanity and seen prey. He did not understand that he was looking at the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever produced. A species that had spent its entire existence learning how to fight. A species that would rather die than kneel. The war for Earth was about to begin, and the universe would never be the same. The first wave of Vexorian landing craft descended through Earth's atmosphere like a swarm of metal locusts. There were thousands of them, each one carrying 100 soldiers armed with weapons that could vaporize steel. They expected to land in the major cities and begin the occupation. They expected terrified humans running through the streets. They expected surrender. What they got was fire. Captain Chris Palmer sat in the command chair of the USS Defiance, a stealth destroyer hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. He was 38 years old, with a shaved head and calm brown eyes that never seemed to blink during combat. His crew of 200 had trained for years in secret, preparing for a war that most people believed would never come. Now that war was here. "All ships, this is Defiance Actual," Chris spoke into the fleet communication system. "The enemy is entering the kill zone. Remember your training. Remember your families. Remember why we fight." 12 stealth destroyers powered up their engines and emerged from the shadows of the asteroids. They were small compared to the Vexorian warships, but they were fast and deadly. More importantly, they were invisible to alien sensors until it was too late. The Defiance fired first. A stream of missiles streaked across the void and slammed into a Vexorian cruiser. The alien ship's shields flickered and died. A second volley punched through its hull and turned it into an expanding cloud of debris. On the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, Admiral Zethkar watched in disbelief. "Where did those ships come from?" he demanded. Vrex checked his instruments frantically. "Unknown, Admiral. They do not appear on our sensors. They should not exist." "Clearly they do exist. Destroy them." The Vexorian fleet turned its attention to the human destroyers. Massive energy beams lanced through space, but the small ships were already moving, ducking and weaving through the chaos with impossible skill. Back on Earth, the landing craft were having problems of their own. General Katie Sullivan watched the tactical display from her bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was 60 years old, with white hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes like chips of blue ice. She had fought in 3 wars during her career. She had lost friends, watched soldiers die, and made decisions that haunted her dreams. None of it had prepared her for this. But she was ready anyway. "Status report," she ordered. Lieutenant Ryan Peters, her aide, pulled up the data on the main screen. "Ma'am, the first wave of enemy landing craft are entering North American airspace. Estimated time to major population centers is 12 minutes. Katie nodded slowly. "Activate the Sentinel network." Across the continent, hidden among commercial satellites and space stations, hundreds of weapons platforms came online. They had been placed in orbit over the past 50 years, disguised as weather satellites and communication relays. Nobody outside of the highest levels of government knew they existed. The landing craft never saw them coming. Kinetic projectiles, essentially metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds, rained down from orbit. Each impact released energy equal to a small nuclear bomb. The first wave of Vexorian landing craft simply ceased to exist. On the ground, people looked up and saw the sky filled with explosions. Some thought the world was ending. Others began to cheer. Admiral Zethkar received the casualty reports with growing horror. 300 landing craft destroyed in the first 5 minutes. 200 more in the next 10. His soldiers were dying before they could even reach the ground. "Pull back the landing forces," he ordered. "Focus all firepower on those orbital weapons." The Vexorian fleet turned its guns toward Earth, searching for the hidden platforms. They found some and destroyed them. But for every platform they killed, another seemed to take its place. And then the humans launched their counterattack. Dr. Eric Bennett had spent 30 years working on theoretical physics in a university laboratory. He had never imagined that his research would be used for war. But when the aliens came, he was recruited into a secret program called Project Thunder. His job was simple: find a way to hurt the invaders. He had found it. The weapon was called an electromagnetic cascade device. It looked like a simple missile, but inside was technology that Eric still did not fully understand. When it detonated near an enemy ship, it created a chain reaction that overloaded every electrical system within a 10-mile radius. Katie Sullivan gave the order to launch. 50 missiles rose from hidden silos across North America. They climbed through the atmosphere and into orbit, guided by human pilots who knew they were flying to their deaths. The Vexorians shot down 30 of them. 20 made it through. The detonations lit up the night sky like a second sun. Admiral Zethkar watched 300 of his ships go dark simultaneously. Their systems failed. Their engines died. They began falling toward Earth, pulled down by the planet's gravity. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." Vrex was reading through the intelligence files on humanity, searching desperately for answers. "Admiral, I have found something. These humans have been fighting wars among themselves for their entire recorded history. They developed weapons capable of destroying their own world. They fought 2 global conflicts in a single century that killed hundreds of millions. Zethkar turned to face his subordinate. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that we made a mistake, Admiral. These are not primitives. They are survivors. They have been practicing for this war for thousands of years." The truth of those words hung in the air like poison gas. On Earth, the celebration was short-lived. Yes, they had won the first battle. Yes, they had surprised the invaders and made them bleed. But the Vexorian fleet still numbered in the thousands. More soldiers were coming, more weapons, more death. Commander Daniel Harrison addressed the planet in a broadcast that reached every corner of the globe. "People of Earth, today we proved something to ourselves and to the universe. We proved that we will not surrender. We proved that we will not bow down. We proved that humanity is not a species that goes quietly into the dark." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "This war is not over. The enemy will return. They will come with more ships, more weapons, more hatred, and we will meet them. We will fight them on the ground and in the sky. We will fight them in our cities and in our homes. We will fight them with everything we have, and then we will fight them with our bare hands if we must." His voice grew stronger, filled with a fire that seemed to spread through every screen and speaker on the planet. "They wanted to conquer Earth. They wanted to add us to their collection of broken species. They thought we would be easy prey." Daniel smiled, and it was the smile of a predator, not prey. "They were wrong, and before this war is over, they will learn exactly how wrong they were. Because we are humanity. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. We do not die easily." He leaned forward, his eyes burning with determination. "And we are just getting started." The broadcast ended. Across the planet, people who had been afraid began to feel something else: hope, anger, determination. The aliens had come to conquer them, and they had failed. They would come again, and they would fail again, because humanity was awake now, and the storm was just beginning. The war that Admiral Zethkar expected to last hours stretched into weeks. The weeks became months, and with each passing day, the Vexorian Empire learned a terrible truth about humanity. They did not know how to quit. The streets of Chicago had become a graveyard. Buildings that once touched the sky now lay in broken heaps of concrete and steel. Cars sat abandoned in the roads, covered in dust and ash. The city had fallen to the Vexorians 3 weeks ago. But falling and surrendering were two very different things. Sergeant Brandon Cole moved through the ruins like a ghost. He was 29 years old, with a beard he had not shaved since the invasion began, and eyes that had seen too much death for someone so young. Before the war, he had been a construction worker with a wife and a baby daughter. His wife died in the first bombing. His daughter was somewhere safe, hidden in a bunker with his parents. He fought now so that she might grow up in a free world. His squad followed close behind him. There were 6 of them left out of the original 12. Private Megan Torres was the youngest, only 22, but she could shoot the wings off a fly at 300 yards. Corporal Jake Bennett was the biggest, a former football player who carried a machine gun like other men carried rifles. The others were just as tough, just as desperate, just as determined. They were all that stood between the aliens and total control of the city. "Movement ahead," Megan whispered, raising her rifle. Brandon signaled for the squad to take cover behind a collapsed wall. Through the dust and smoke, he could see a Vexorian patrol moving down the street. There were 10 of them, tall gray figures in black armor that protected them from bullets and blades. Their weapons hummed with energy that could vaporize a human in seconds. The squad was outgunned, outmatched, outnumbered. They attacked anyway. Jake opened fire first, his machine gun roaring like an angry beast. The bullets bounced off the Vexorian armor, but they created confusion and chaos. The aliens turned toward the sound, searching for targets. They never saw the explosive charges buried beneath the street. Brandon pressed the detonator. The blast threw 3 aliens into the air and knocked the others to the ground. Before they could recover, the squad was on them. Megan put bullets through the weak points in their armor, the joints and seams that their reconnaissance had identified. Jake used his massive hands to rip the helmet off one alien and crush its skull against the pavement. It was over in 30 seconds. 10 Vexorian soldiers lay dead in the street. The squad grabbed their weapons and ammunition, then disappeared into the tunnels beneath the city before reinforcements could arrive. This scene repeated itself 1,000 times across the planet. In every occupied city, human resistance fighters struck from the shadows. They bombed supply convoys. They assassinated officers. They made the aliens pay in blood for every inch of ground. Above the planet, the space battle continued without pause. Admiral Scott Miller commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from the bridge of the carrier Vengeance. His fleet was outnumbered 10-1, and every day brought new losses, but every day also brought new victories. The humans had learned to fight in space. They used asteroids as shields and weapons. They developed tactics that confused and frustrated the alien commanders. They flew their ships with a reckless courage that the Vexorians simply could not understand. Lieutenant Nicole Harper was one of the best pilots in the fleet. She was 31 years old, with red hair and freckles and a laugh that could light up a room. Before the war, she had been a commercial pilot who flew tourists to orbital hotels. Now she flew a fighter craft armed with missiles and cannons, hunting Vexorian warships through the darkness of space. Her ship had taken heavy damage in the last engagement. The engines were failing. The weapons were nearly empty. She could try to limp back to the carrier, but she would never make it. So she made another choice. The Vexorian cruiser Dominance hung in space ahead of her, its massive guns firing at the human fleet. Nicole aimed her crippled fighter at the ship's engine section and pushed her throttle to maximum. "Vengeance, this is Harper," she transmitted, her voice calm and steady. "I am making my final run. Tell my family I love them. Tell them I died fighting." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Miller listened to the transmission with tears in his eyes. "Godspeed, Lieutenant." Nicole's fighter slammed into the Dominance at full speed. The explosion tore through the cruiser's engine room and triggered a chain reaction that ripped the ship apart. One human pilot, one small fighter, one moment of sacrifice had destroyed a vessel carrying 10,000 enemy soldiers. This was how humans fought. Not with superior technology or greater numbers, but with heart, with courage, with a willingness to sacrifice everything for their people and their planet. Admiral Zethkar did not understand it. In his experience, conquered species accepted their fate. They submitted. They learned to serve. But these humans refused to follow the pattern. Every city his forces occupied became a death trap. His soldiers were afraid to walk the streets. His officers were being killed in their beds. His supply lines were constantly under attack. And in space, the humans continued to fight with that same insane determination. They flew their ships into his vessels. They detonated bombs strapped to their own bodies. They chose death over surrender, again and again and again. "What manner of species is this?" Zethkar asked one night, staring at the reports of his losses. Vrex had been studying human history, trying to understand their enemies. "They call themselves survivors, Admiral. Their planet has tried to kill them many times. Ice ages, plagues, asteroids, natural disasters. Each time they adapted and continued. They believe that struggle makes them stronger." "And their wars? Countless. They have fought each other for land, for resources, for ideas, for religion. In a single century, they fought 2 conflicts that killed 100 million of their own kind." Zethkar shook his head slowly. "A species that destroys itself and keeps going. How do you defeat such beings?" "I do not know, Admiral. I do not think anyone does." On Earth, the months of fighting had taken a terrible toll. Cities lay in ruins. Billions of people had died. The survivors lived in bunkers and caves and subway tunnels, emerging only to fight or forage for supplies. But they had not broken. They had not surrendered. They had not given up hope. Dr. Eric Bennett worked day and night in his underground laboratory, surrounded by the brightest minds humanity had left. They were building something new, something that would change the course of the war. His assistant, Amanda Gray, brought him coffee and looked at the plans on his desk. "Will it work?" she asked. Eric smiled tiredly. "It will work. It will turn their own technology against them. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment they have will become a bomb waiting to explode." "How long until it is ready?" "Soon. Very soon. And when we deploy it, the Vexorians will learn what happens when you try to conquer humanity." Amanda looked at the old scientist and saw something in his eyes that she had not seen in months. Hope. Real hope. "We are going to win, are we not?" she asked softly. Eric nodded slowly. "We are going to do more than win, my dear. We are going to teach the entire galaxy a lesson it will never forget." Outside the laboratory, the war raged on. Humans fought and died in the streets. Ships exploded in the darkness of space. The planet bled from 1,000 wounds, but deep beneath the mountains, a weapon was being born, and when it was ready, the universe would tremble. 6 months after the first alien ship appeared in Earth's sky, the Vexorian High Council sent a message to Admiral Zethkar. It was not a message of support or encouragement. It was a demand. Victory. Immediate and complete. No more excuses. Zethkar read the message in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Wrath. The ship that had once seemed invincible now bore the scars of 100 battles. Its hull was patched with emergency repairs. Its crew worked in exhausted shifts, always watching for the next human attack. He had begun this war with 4,000 ships. He now had less than 2,000. The humans had destroyed half his fleet with weapons that should not exist. Tactics that made no sense, and a determination that bordered on insanity. And still they fought. On Earth, Commander Daniel Harrison stood before the World Council in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The council chamber was smaller than it had been before the war. Many leaders had died in the bombings. Others had been killed in the fighting. The survivors looked tired and worn, but their eyes still held that spark of defiance that had become humanity's defining characteristic. "We have lost approximately 3 billion people," Daniel reported, his voice heavy with grief. "Every continent has suffered massive damage. Our cities are in ruins. Our infrastructure is shattered beyond recognition." President Nathan Cole nodded slowly. He had aged 20 years in 6 months. His hair had turned completely white, and deep lines marked his face, but his voice was still strong. "And yet we continue to fight. Yes, sir, we continue to fight, and I believe we are winning." The council members murmured in surprise. Daniel pulled up a holographic display showing the current state of the war. "The enemy fleet has been reduced by 60%. Their ground forces have suffered even greater losses. They control less than 20% of the planet's surface, and they cannot hold what they have taken. Every city they occupy becomes a death trap for their soldiers." Captain Lisa Monroe stepped forward. She had a bandage wrapped around her head from a wound she received during a recent mission, but she stood straight and tall. "We have also completed Project Extinction, sir." The room fell silent. Everyone knew about Project Extinction. It was humanity's final option, a weapon so devastating that many had hoped they would never need to use it. Dr. Eric Bennett had designed it based on principles that human scientists barely understood. It was a virus, but not a biological one. It was a technological plague that could spread through electronic systems, corrupting and destroying everything it touched. If deployed, it would not just cripple the Vexorian fleet above Earth. It would spread through their communication networks to their homeworld. It would infect every ship, every station, every piece of technology the Empire possessed. It would send the Vexorians back to the Stone Age. "Are we certain it will work?" President Cole asked. Dr. Bennett himself answered. He had come to the meeting despite the danger, believing that the council needed to hear directly from him. "I am certain, sir. The virus has been tested on captured Vexorian equipment. It spreads faster than they can contain it. Once released, it cannot be stopped." "And the cost? What happens to us?" Eric paused before answering. "The virus is designed to target Vexorian technology specifically. Our systems will not be affected. However, deploying this weapon will change everything. Every species in the galaxy will know what we did. Some will fear us. Others will hate us. We will be making a statement that cannot be taken back." President Cole looked around the table at his fellow leaders. He saw fear in some eyes, determination in others. He saw the weight of the decision they were about to make. "What kind of statement?" he asked. Daniel Harrison answered for the scientist. "A statement that Earth is not to be touched. A statement that humanity will not be conquered. A statement that any species that threatens our world will face consequences beyond imagination." The president was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "We did not start this war. They came to our world uninvited. They demanded our surrender. They killed billions of our people. They showed us no mercy." He stood up from his chair and looked at each council member in turn. "I do not believe we are obligated to show them mercy in return. I believe we have the right to defend ourselves with every weapon at our disposal, and I believe that the universe needs to learn that humanity is not prey." One by one, the council members nodded their agreement. "Then it is decided," President Cole said. "We will give the Vexorians one chance to withdraw. If they refuse, we will deploy Project Extinction." The message was composed that night. It was not a negotiation. It was not a plea for peace. It was an ultimatum. Admiral Zethkar received it the following morning. "Admiral Zethkar of the Vexorian Dominion. This is Commander Daniel Harrison of the United Earth Defense Command. You have 24 hours to withdraw all forces from the Sol system. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of equipment. If you refuse, or if you attack during the withdrawal, we will deploy a weapon that will destroy your fleet and cripple your empire for generations. This is not a threat. This is a promise. You have seen what humanity can do when pushed to the edge. You have seen our determination, our courage, and our willingness to sacrifice everything. Do not test us further. Leave our world and never return." The clock is ticking. Zethkar listened to the message 3 times. He wanted to believe it was a bluff. He wanted to dismiss it as the desperate words of a defeated enemy. But he had spent 6 months fighting these humans. He had watched them fly ships into his vessels. He had seen them detonate explosives strapped to their own bodies. He had witnessed acts of suicidal courage that defied everything he understood about war and survival. They were not bluffing. They never bluffed. "Sub-Admiral Vrex," he called. Vrex entered the command deck. He looked as tired as Zethkar felt. "Yes, Admiral." "Contact the High Council. Tell them we need guidance on how to respond to the human ultimatum." Vrex hesitated. "Admiral, the Council has made their position clear. They want victory." "The Council is not here. They have not seen what these humans are capable of. They have not watched their soldiers die by the millions. They do not understand." "Understand what, sir?" Zethkar turned to face the viewing window. Earth hung in the darkness below, scarred and burning but still defiant. "They do not understand that we have already lost. The only question now is how much we lose." The next 24 hours passed slowly. On Earth, people waited and prayed and prepared for the worst. In space, the human fleet held position, ready to fight or stand down depending on the enemy's response. Admiral Scott Miller stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the Vexorian ships through his tactical display. "What do you think they will do?" his first officer asked. Miller shrugged. "I think they will do what every bully does when they realize their victim can hit back. They will run." "And if they do not run?" Miller looked at the man and smiled grimly. "Then we teach them a lesson the galaxy will never forget." The hours ticked away. 19, 18, 17. Each moment felt like an eternity. Each second brought humanity closer to either peace or total war. And in the bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Daniel Harrison sat alone, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The losses, the sacrifices, the heroes who had given their lives so that humanity could survive. He hoped the Vexorians would leave. He hoped the war would end. He hoped they had done enough, but if they had not, he was ready to finish what the aliens had started. One way or another, this war would end soon. And humanity would be remembered forever. The clock showed 6 hours remaining when Admiral Zethkar made his decision. He stood alone on the observation deck of the Eternal Wrath, looking down at the planet that had cost him everything, Earth. A small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star. It should have been an easy conquest. It should have been another trophy for the Vexorian Empire. Instead, it had become a graveyard. 2,000 ships lost, millions of soldiers dead. An invasion that was supposed to take days had stretched into 6 months of brutal, unending warfare. And the humans showed no signs of stopping. They would fight until the last one of them was dead. And even then, Zethkar suspected their ghosts would find a way to keep fighting. The High Council had sent their response to his request for guidance. They demanded that he continue the attack. They called the human ultimatum a bluff. They insisted that the glory of the Empire could not be stained by retreat. Zethkar deleted the message without responding. The council sat in comfortable palaces on the homeworld, surrounded by servants and luxury. They had not seen what he had seen. They had not fought what he had fought. They did not understand. Sub-Admiral Vrex entered the observation deck quietly. He had been Zethkar's second-in-command for 15 years. He had never seen the Admiral look so defeated. "The deadline approaches, sir. What are your orders?" Zethkar was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired and old. "Do you know what the humans call their planet, Vrex?" "Earth, sir. It means ground or soil in their language." "A simple name?" "A humble name. They do not call it the glorious homeworld or the center of all things. They call it dirt." Vrex said nothing, waiting for his commander to continue. "And yet they fight for it like nothing I have ever seen. They destroy their own cities rather than let us take them. They fly their ships into ours rather than retreat. They die by the billions, and still they keep fighting." Zethkar turned to face his subordinate. His 6 eyes were heavy with exhaustion and something else. Respect. "I have conquered 37 worlds, Vrex. I have broken empires and enslaved entire species. But I have never encountered anything like these humans. They are insane. They are suicidal. They are absolutely terrifying." "What do you wish to do, Admiral?" Zethkar looked back at the planet one more time. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were waiting to see if they would live or die, waiting to see if their defiance had been worth the cost. "We leave," he said finally. "We withdraw all forces from this system and we never return." Vrex nodded slowly. "The Council will be furious. Let them be furious. Let them come here themselves and see what I have seen. Let them try to conquer a species that would rather burn their own world than kneel." The orders went out across the fleet. At first, many captains thought it was a mistake. The Vexorian Empire did not retreat. The Vexorian Empire did not surrender. The Vexorian Empire conquered and enslaved and dominated. But the orders were clear and came directly from the Admiral. Withdraw. All forces. Immediately. On Earth, the sensors detected the change in the enemy fleet. Ships that had been positioned for attack were turning away. Landing craft that had been preparing to descend were returning to their carriers. The Vexorians were leaving. Commander Daniel Harrison received the report in the command center beneath Geneva. He stared at the data for a full minute, afraid to believe what he was seeing. "Is this real?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Lisa Monroe checked the readings 3 times before answering. "It is real, sir. They are withdrawing. All of them." Daniel closed his eyes. He thought about everyone who had died to make this moment possible. The soldiers who had fought in the streets, the pilots who had flown into enemy ships, the scientists who had worked without sleep, the civilians who had refused to give up hope. 3 billion people, gone, but not forgotten. "Send a message to all commands," he said quietly. "Hold fire unless fired upon. Let them leave." The withdrawal took 3 days. Thousands of Vexorian ships moved slowly out of Earth's orbit, past the Moon, past Mars, toward the edge of the solar system where they could engage their faster-than-light drives and return to their own territory. Admiral Zethkar was the last to leave. His flagship, the Eternal Wrath, hung in space above Earth for one final hour. He wanted to remember this world. He wanted to remember what it looked like, what it had cost, what it had taught him. Before he gave the order to depart, he sent one final transmission to the planet below. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Zethkar. I came to your world expecting to add another conquered species to the Dominion. I leave having learned something I will never forget." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You are not like other species. You do not surrender. You do not accept defeat. You would rather die than kneel, and you make your deaths cost more than most species make their lives worth. I do not know if you will ever leave your world and travel among the stars, but I know this. If you do, the galaxy should be afraid, because I have seen what you are capable of. I have seen your determination, your courage, your willingness to sacrifice everything for each other. You are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered, and I say that with respect. Goodbye, Earth. I hope we never meet again." The Eternal Wrath turned away from the planet and vanished into the darkness between stars. On Earth, people emerged from their bunkers and shelters and looked up at a sky that was finally free of enemy ships. They stood in the ruins of their cities and wept. They embraced their loved ones and thanked whatever gods they believed in. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds, against technologies centuries more advanced than their own. They had won. President Nathan Cole addressed the planet that evening. His face was lined with grief, but his eyes shone with pride. "Today, we celebrate a victory that many believed was impossible. Today, we honor the billions who gave their lives so that humanity could remain free. Today, we remember who we are and what we are capable of. The universe now knows that Earth is not to be touched. The universe now knows that humanity is not a species that surrenders. The universe now knows that we will pay any price, bear any burden, to protect our world and our people. To the other civilizations watching from the stars, I have a simple message. We did not seek this war. We did not want this conflict. But when it came to us, we fought, and we won. Come in peace, and we will welcome you as friends. Come in war, and you will face the same fate as the Vexorians. This is our world, this is our home, and we will defend it to our last breath." The broadcast ended, but its effects rippled across the galaxy for years to come. Other empires that had been considering expansion toward the Sol system quietly abandoned their plans. Species that had heard of Earth's primitive civilization now spoke of humanity in whispers of fear and respect. The message was clear, spreading from star to star like wildfire. Do not touch Earth. Do not threaten humanity. They are not prey. They are something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something remarkable. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Daniel Harrison retired from military service 2 years after the war ended. He spent his remaining days in a small house by the ocean, watching the waves and thinking about everyone who had not lived to see peace. Sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the stars and remember the message humanity had sent at the beginning of the war, that single word that had told the universe exactly who they were dealing with. Die. It had been a message of defiance. A declaration that humanity would rather face extinction than surrender its freedom. But it had become something more. It had become a warning, a promise, a truth that the entire galaxy now understood. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not break. Humanity survives. And if you come for Earth, you had better be ready to die trying to take it. Because humanity will be ready. Humanity will always be ready. That was the message written in the blood of 3 billion martyrs. That was the lesson taught in 6 months of impossible war. That was the truth that echoed across the stars forever after. Earth endures. Humanity persists. And the universe remembers. The end.